Minister Lawrence Wong.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I support the motion of thanks to the President. The President's speech laid out the priorities of the government, and I'll focus my remarks today on how we can build a better city, one that's more innovative, inclusive, and resilient. We often think of cities as buildings, hardware, and infrastructure, but cities can also be thought of as living organisms. In nature, it is survival of the fittest. Likewise, cities must evolve and adapt to survive in an ever-changing world. There is no such thing as status quo. We are either improving or we are declining and going backwards. And there are countless examples of cities that once were centers of economic activity but are no longer relevant today. At the same time, many emerging cities are working hard to leapfrog the competition and get to the top. So the choice for Singapore is simple: adapt or perish. We see that from our own history. Over the last 700 years, Singapore's fortune has waxed and waned. The ancient seaport of Singapore thrived in the late 13th century. In fact, it was described in the Malay annals as the first great Malay trading port. But by the 15th century, the port had declined and the city had been depopulated. Then the arrival of the British in 1819 set Singapore on a different trajectory, which is why we are commemorating the bicentennial next year. Post-independence, we've succeeded against tough odds and moved from third world to first. So what's next for our city? In answering that question, I think we have to also reflect on our fundamental purpose. And as Mr. Gan Thiam Poh said yesterday, Singapore's raison d'etre has been and will continue to be that of a trading hub serving the region and the world. But in today's world, it's not just about trading in goods. It's also about the flow of people, talent, finance, and other services. It's about being at the center of action, the center of research, knowledge-based, and innovation activities across Asia and the world. And that's why in his budget speech this year, Minister Heng Swee Keat talked about anchoring Singapore as a global Asian node of innovation and enterprise. We are taking bold and decisive steps to realize this vision. We are all familiar with the plans for the new Changi Terminal 5 and Tuas Megaport. These are not just individual projects. They are the catalyst to transform major parts of the island. In the east, we are reviewing how the entire area around the expanded Changi Airport can be renewed and put to better use. For example, we can develop new industries, especially those related to the aviation sector. And these activities can also benefit from linkages with the nearby Changi Business Park and SUTD. Likewise, in the west, we are looking at new industry clusters that can be located next to the port and leverage on synergies with the port. These will also be connected to broader developments in the west, including the Jurong Innovation District and the Jurong Lake District. In the north, we are stitching together multiple developments, from Woodlands to Sembawang and Seletar, as well as the upcoming Punggol Digital District. So it's an entire northern corridor which can anchor new businesses and investments. The point is that we are not just doing more of the same. Each new development will be better than the one before. Each new project will push the boundary and pilot innovative solutions to make our city more attractive and to further enhance our quality of life. And this is what we have been doing all the while. Look at what we have done in our HDB towns. Our newest town is Punggol. The blueprint for Punggol was launched in 1996, and then we had to slow down due to the financial crisis, but we improved and upgraded the plan, relaunched it in 2007. Now, Punggol is almost complete, and it's a beautiful waterfront town. The new flats are very popular with young couples. The next town is Tengah. It's a forest town which we have designed, and the first batch of flats will be sold in November this year. We will improve on what we have done in Punggol so that Tengah will be even better with new concepts of urban living like smart home solutions, eco-friendly features, and even autonomous vehicles to provide shuttle services around the estate. And besides launching Tengah, we are now already looking at the next new site, and that is Paya Lebar, after the airbase relocates to Changi. The site is bigger than Ang Mo Kio or Bishan, so there are huge opportunities for further urban innovation, for better quality of life for Singaporeans. In the same way, we have been constantly developing and improving our city centre. We started by renewing our CBD in the 70s to create more office space. Then we extended the CBD to Marina Bay. We started reclaiming the land in the 70s. We launched the master plan for Marina Bay in 1983, and over the subsequent years and decades worked hard at conceiving and developing the Marina Bay that we have today. Next, we will extend the city further to the greater southern waterfront after the ports move to Tuas. The space is 3 times the size of Marina Bay, but we want the impact to be much more than 3 times Marina Bay. This is a completely blank canvas for all of us to dream of exciting new possibilities for the future and to make these dreams come true. So when we say that we are not done building Singapore, it's not a slogan. It's a single-minded commitment and mission to keep building and improving our city. And I can confidently say that over the coming years and decades, Singapore will be undergoing its most extensive transformation yet. What is our goal? To make Singapore one of the great cities of the world. A truly outstanding city to live, work and play in, the kind that people talk about and return to over and over again. A city where everyone belongs, where all of us are proud to call home. An outstanding city is not just economically vibrant, but it also needs to be socially inclusive. A place that embraces diversity, where different groups mix easily and have equal opportunities to participate. Unfortunately, if you look around us, it is not always the case in many cities. Often, the downtown area looks good, but other areas in the city are left to deteriorate, resulting in urban slums. From time to time, you will see segregation of neighborhoods between rich and poor, between ethnic groups, between young and old. We've worked very hard to avoid these problems in Singapore. Every HDB town has a balanced mix of residents across different ethnic groups and backgrounds. Every town has a mix of public-private developments as well as different HDB flats catering to diverse needs. Every town has common spaces where residents of different backgrounds get together, socialize and forge shared memories together. We have neighborhood shops and hawker centers. We have playgrounds and fields where the children grow up and play. And personally, growing up in Marine Parade, I still have very fond memories of the Dragon playground downstairs next to my block, and the children from all around that block coming down to play together. All of us may not know one another very well, from different backgrounds, it doesn't matter, we all get together to play. The void decks would always be animated with activities. It would be a real treat for us to see a magic show, and then there'll be potluck, and the parents would cook, and we all eat together. And this special quality of HDB living, I'm sure all of you can attest, is still alive and well today. So we've done well in the last 50 years, but much more still needs to be done. Our housing and urban plans must continue to push back against the growing pressures of inequality and social stratification. We cannot just leave things to chance, but we must deliberately plan for a more equal and inclusive society. And that's why we've been building more rental flats with newer and better designs alongside the sold flats in various HDB towns. This means that families grow up in the same neighborhood and the residents can share the same common areas and facilities. Now we are going one step further to integrate rental and sold units within the same HDB block itself. And we are also doing more to help families in our rental flats. Last year, almost 1,000 households moved out of rental flats to become homeowners. And they are supported by significant housing grants as well as new programs like the Fresh Start housing scheme. 1,000 households from rental to home ownership. That's not bad, but we must do even better than that. So MND will be working with MSF, the SSO and the VWOs to see how best we can solve these families in an integrated manner, to help them solve their issues holistically and get back on their feet. And besides looking out for rental families, we must also take care of the elderly, especially those who are living on their own in studio and two-room flexi apartments. We don't want them to feel isolated and disengaged, as members have highlighted just now. So we are putting a lot more emphasis in the way we design our HDB flats and estates. This means more shared spaces, like civic plazas and community gardens for them to stay active. It means more community services and amenities all under one roof for convenient access. And a good example of what we have done is Kampong Admiralty, which was officially opened over the weekend. Kampong Admiralty is just one small kampong with just over 100 units, but we have planned for many more kampongs across all HDB towns. Another aspect of inclusive development is to continually renew our buildings and infrastructure, because we don't want a situation where certain parts of Singapore are left to degrade and we end up with deteriorated neighborhoods or towns, inhabited largely by lower income or elderly residents. This is not just a government matter, it's a shared responsibility. It requires the town councils to do proper maintenance and upkeeping of their estate. It requires residents to take care of the neighborhood. But the government has and will continue to do its part. All of you are familiar with the programs that we have put in place for estate renewal. You know them by the acronyms. We have SIRS, ROH, NRP, HIP. All of these programs are scoped carefully to ensure they are fiscally sustainable. SIRS, Selective En Bloc Scheme, as the name implies, is done on a very selective basis. ROH, Remaking of Heartlands, is for town-wide enhancements. We have largely completed 6 towns, and consultations are ongoing for 3 towns now. The Neighbourhood Renewal Program, which is for neighbourhood facilities, is ongoing for blocks built up to 1995. And HIP, the Home Improvement Program for enhancements or for retrofitting within the unit itself, is being completed for the flats that were built up to 1986. The selection of flats will be done as soon as possible so that we can complete this batch of HIP. Many of you have asked for extensions of these programs. You would like to know when ROH, Remaking of Heartlands, can be done for your town, or when HIP can be extended to the newer flats. We do want to renew and rejuvenate our HDB towns in an orderly fashion. But as I've explained before, upgrading projects are expensive and span many years. So we are studying this carefully to make sure that we have the resources to follow through on any future commitments. The need to maintain and renew our HDB towns is also linked to the issue of the end of lease. Now, we've made very clear from the outset that the HDB lease is 99 years. There's no doubt about that. 99 years is a long time. It covers 2 generations. The oldest HDB flat today is around 50 years, and the vast majority have more than 60 years remaining. So this is not an immediate issue at all. Yet some have already called for automatic lease extensions or for HDB lease top-ups by private developers. It will be easy for me to give you a politically expedient answer now and try to wave away the problem. But there are serious trade-offs and ramifications to consider. Take the issue of lease extension. It sounds easy to do, but it's not a straightforward matter. First, we should not assume everybody wants it. Second, as all of us who run town councils know, much more maintenance is needed for older flats. Imagine the flat beyond 99 years. And how much more maintenance is needed and how costly it will be for residents. More importantly, despite our best efforts at planning, we are still severely constrained by space in Singapore. If there's no more land to recycle for future public housing, then what will happen to our children and grandchildren? How will they have access to subsidized housing in the future? So this is a complex issue, and I'm glad many members who spoke about this recognize this. Several MPs, several members have offered suggestions, including Ms. Cheryl Chan and Mr. Alex Yam. Mr. Leon Pereira also spoke about this, and I look forward to the Workers' Party's suggestions on this matter, because he said that the Workers' Party is studying this matter very seriously, and I look forward to receiving your suggestions as well. In fact, we welcome views on this matter from all parties and all Singaporeans. I recognize that it's a matter that Singaporeans care about, and we want to listen to your views and feedback. Ultimately, the government must grapple with these difficult questions, study the matter, and do the responsible thing. Our duty is not just to the current generation who already own homes, but also to the future generations, those not yet voting, those not yet born, those whose lives and future depend on us making the right decision now on their behalf. At the end of the day, we want to ensure every generation will be able to have an affordable and quality home in Singapore. Now, we still have time to do this work, as I emphasized earlier. But for now, what's important is that we do not speculate, we do not spread misinformation which can impact the market. And this is critical. In fact, recently there was speculation that the government would stop the use of CPF entirely for the purchase of HDB flats. It started from a media report highlighting a suggestion from an academic. He later clarified that the article did not fully reflect his views, yet the information continued to circulate online and through WhatsApp groups. Just earlier this week, a resident came to me, showed me the phone with the screenshot of the article and said, "Is the government going to stop the use of CPF?" So let me be very clear about this. We are not stopping the use of CPF for HDB purchase. Even for older flats, CPF can still be used, but under certain conditions to safeguard the retirement adequacy of home buyers. There has also been concern about the impact of lease expiry on HDB prices. But there is still value in older HDB flats, value which can be unlocked for retirement. We look at transaction data over the past year, real transaction data over the past year. An older 4-room flat with less than 60 years remaining would sell for around $300,000 median price, and a 5-room flat would sell for around $400,000. These are for non-mature estates. For flats in more popular locations, prices can be significantly higher, more than double the prices which I just mentioned earlier, more than double. So a flat that's 4-room with less than 60 years remaining can sell for more than $600,000. 5-room flat can sell for more than $800,000. Not pretend data, not theoretical data, transaction data over the past year. So the transacted price depends not just on the length of the remaining lease, clearly, but it also depends on many other attributes. Factors like location, the story height, the condition of the flat, these are all very relevant. Whatever the price you get from a sale of a flat today, the sales proceeds would be more than sufficient to purchase a smaller flat for retirement, for those who are interested in right-sizing. For example, if you sell a flat now, a 4- or 5-room, you can purchase a 2-room flexi flat from HDB with a 40-year lease for around $100,000, or a 3-room resale flat for around $250,000, depending on location. And people are doing that. I'll give you an actual example that happened recently. Mr. Abdul Aziz, who is 67 years old, originally owned a 3-room flat in Marsiling with around 60 years of lease remaining. He decided to right-size to a studio apartment in Kampong Admiralty with a 30-year lease. He sold his 3-room flat for $250,000, purchased the studio apartment for just over $100,000, so he has more than $140,000 left in cash and CPF proceeds to supplement his retirement savings. For those who prefer to stay in the same place, there's also the lease buyback scheme, where you sell part of the remaining lease to HDB, or the option of renting out a bedroom. So the monetization schemes we have are in place and they are working. And we will continue to review and enhance these schemes and help our elderly unlock the value of their flats for retirement. Buying and selling a property can be a complex undertaking, and it's easy to get carried away by market sentiments. Just not too long ago, there were people speculating in older HDB flats, hoping to get CSRS benefits, and not explicitly saying that they were doing that. Now the reverse has happened, and there are people overly anxious about how much their older flats can fetch in the resale market. So my advice to Singaporeans is this: don't buy or sell based on speculative information. Look at the facts, and if you are in the market for a home, do your homework carefully and choose something that fits your needs. We will make the resale market work better for potential buyers and sellers. In fact, I was just reminded of this in a recent MPS. One resident came to see me to seek help for more time to sell their flat because they couldn't get the price that they were looking for. Right after that, another resident came and said, I need a flat urgently. Please give me a direct allocation of a flat from HDB. I told her, I can't do that. You've got to ballot. But if you want a flat so urgent, so urgently, why don't you go to the resale market? And she immediately said, resale market, too expensive. So on one hand, sellers find it hard to sell. On the other hand, buyers are saying, price is still too high. So we need to find better ways to match buyers and sellers in the HDB market. We've started with the HDB resale portal, which has simplified and speeded up the resale transaction process. And we will continue to do more. We will provide more information on the available flats in the market, be it new flats or resale flats, so that we can help buyers and sellers transact more smoothly, and we can help Singaporeans make more informed housing decisions that best suit their needs. Besides the public housing market, we are also watching the private housing market. The property market, like any other asset market, will go through ups and downs. The government cannot control or fix prices, but neither do we take a completely hands-off approach. We recognize that there may be over-borrowing in a very low interest rate environment, that sharp price changes that run ahead of fundamentals can be destabilizing to the broader economy. And so we have put in place various measures over the years. We will continue to monitor the market trends closely and make use of various policy levers to ensure a stable and sustainable property market. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, Singapore is a nation of homeowners, so it's understandable why housing remains a top concern for all our people. My assurance is that the government will continue to provide affordable and quality homes for all Singaporeans, both now and into the future. We will make sure that in every town we have a range of housing and amenities for all ages, more shared spaces for all to enjoy, and a place where every Singaporean feels that they belong. Besides being more innovative and inclusive, we also have to incorporate resilience in our urban development. What will happen to the world in the next 50 years? No one can predict. But we can be sure that there will be crises and threats and even black swan events. So we have to build resilience into our city and urban systems. One big unknown is whether the planet can continue to sustain continued economic activities. And if the world does not do enough to tackle climate change, Singapore will be at risk of coastal inundation due to sea level rises. So we need to start making preparations now to strengthen Singapore's resilience against climate change. And one specific project that we are doing is a polder development in Pulau Tekong, because the dike system in the polder is designed to cater for sea level rise, and the dike can be raised and upgraded more easily compared to traditional reclamation. Concurrently, we are also studying how best to safeguard Singapore's long-term coastal protection needs. And we are undertaking detailed modeling and engineering studies for this purpose, so that we can identify and recommend appropriate protection strategies. They may include the use of dikes, pumps, or other technologies, but the most important thing is to be prepared. So this is just one example of how we are building resilience into our system, and there are many more things that we will need to do to be a more resilient city. The urban transformation plans I've shared are significant in scale and require considerable fiscal resources. Mr. Pritam Singh said earlier in the debate that the current government has more financial resources than previous generations of PAP leaders. But he forgot to mention that our fiscal commitments and spending are also at their highest ever levels. Singaporeans today are being provided with more services and support than before. For now, we are just able to meet all of our spending needs with current resources. But without additional revenues, how are we to meet the growing healthcare needs, as well as the many other proposals that various people, including the Workers' Party, have been asking for? Both Mr. Pritam Singh and Mr. Leon Pereira have reiterated the call to change the rules on the use of reserves so that we can draw more from the reserves. Mr. Leon Pereira said that this was not just a technical issue, but a deep philosophical issue. And I agree with him. But the rules were discussed at length, debated in this House thoroughly, so that we can find the right balance between present and future generations, and we enshrine the rules in our Constitution. And this was done not too long ago. And what does it say about us and our mindsets and our attitudes if the minute we need the money, the first thing we do is to relax the rules? Surely that will be ill-disciplined, imprudent, and unwise. This goes back to the issue of responsible governance. Look at the challenges that other first-world democracies face. Their politics have become more fractured, chaotic, and unpredictable. And one common thread across these countries is that they are in fiscal difficulties. Why? Because the politicians pander to the electorate, they spend more than they collect in taxes, and run up unfunded obligations and debt. Ultimately, the ones who suffer are the citizens, especially the most vulnerable. Singapore is in a different position today. Our fiscal position is strong. But if we succumb to temptation to change the rules, to chip away at our reserves, we run the very real risk of compromising the long-term health of our nation. That is not the Singaporean way. Our Singaporean way is to look ahead and prepare for the future responsibly. We level with our people so everyone knows what to expect and what hard choices we need to take. We work to serve the interest of all Singaporeans, not just for 1 or 2 electoral cycles, but over the long term. That's what we have been doing and will continue to do. Earlier, I likened the city to a living organism, where we either adapt or perish. Let me use another analogy. In some ways, our next phase of development is like pushing a boulder uphill. It requires constant effort to keep going up. The moment we relax and let go, the boulder starts moving downhill, slowly at first, and then at uncontrollable speeds, and it will be too late. The higher up the hill, the greater the tendency for the boulder to roll down. And indeed, we are now at a higher point in the hill. So we need all hands on deck to keep pushing the boulder together and to reach even higher peaks of excellence. That doesn't mean that you have to agree with every government policy. If you have a different idea or proposal, we stand ready to listen and to review our policies. But please don't disagree just for the sake of doing so. I recall a speech that Mr. Rajaratnam once made, and he said, it's easy to win attention by disagreeing with the government. If the government says white and you advocate black, you will be hailed at the next cocktail reception as an original and bold thinker. But in the end, what's important is that we all come together with the genuine interest to solve the real and vital problems affecting our nation. The academic I mentioned earlier on the CPF matter, Professor Walter Teixeira, when he clarified his remarks on the CPF issue, also wrote on his Facebook page, and I quote, "It's easy to make fun of policymakers, and it's also easy to critique policy. Finding workable solutions that promote the public interest is a lot harder, but more than ever, we need to work together to help improve policy in Singapore." And I fully agree with him. This endeavor of building our future Singapore cannot be done by the government alone. It must be a collective effort involving all Singaporeans. For the MND work, there are many areas where we will want to invite Singaporeans to share their views and perspectives, from major projects like the Greater Southern Waterfront and the rail corridor, to the design of new HDB towns, and right down to specific improvements that can be made in your estate and neighborhood. We want to build a city that reflects the aspirations, the values, and the spirit of our people. That's the work we have to do together over the next 50 years. And then when we celebrate SG 100, we can look forward to a greener, smarter, and even more beautiful city, one that all of us are proud to call home. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Pritam Singh.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Just following up on the speech of Minister Lawrence Wong pertaining to government surpluses, I noted in my speech that at this current point, the government has slightly in excess of $15 billion in accumulated surpluses. And the Minister was speaking of a debate we had when the NIRC formula was amended to include Temasek. In that debate, if I remember correctly, the reasons given for the change was higher expenditure on healthcare, higher expenditure on aging, and infrastructure development. Just to get a sense of the government's plans in future, given the accumulated surpluses in hand, largely I would believe as a result of Temasek's inclusion, do we have some understanding of what new projects or even endowments will be created by the government for the years to come?
Mr. Deputy Speaker, when Mr. Pritam Singh referred to the surpluses this year, I think we have made very clear during the budget and in the budget debate that these were exceptional items, one-off items, and should not be extrapolated. They were specific to certain contributions from MAS, which we have explained. Through the rest of the term, I think the Minister for Finance during the budget debate has made clear, and I'll repeat that, we believe that we have just enough resources to cover government needs for this term of government. But beyond this term of government, we know that expenditures will continue to rise. There's no doubt that healthcare spending will rise. There's no doubt about that. It's indisputable because the population is aging, and it will rise very sharply. So on healthcare alone, the increase is significant, and we have to cater for this. On the revenue side, if you look at our revenues, there's a part of them that are linked to income and taxation, largely to the economy, but we know that the economy is not going to grow in the same way that it used to in the past. Growth is moderating, and so revenues from these different taxation sources will moderate too. Then we have NIRC. This is already the single largest item in our revenue source today. We do not, NIRC as a percentage of GDP will continue to provide us a steady stream of revenues for the future. But we do not expect that to increase as a percentage of GDP. It will just provide a steady, constant stream of revenue as a percentage of GDP. We do not expect that to go up. In fact, there is a risk that it may even come down. Why? Because if you look at the trends around in the asset markets today, interest rates are at historically low levels. If you look at equity valuations, they are highly elevated. So there is a risk that long-term asset returns may be lower in the future. So if you look at this overall picture, spending beyond the term of government going up, inexorable, clearly going to happen, revenue uncertain, if anything, more downside risk than before, then I think you would appreciate that our fiscal position is in fact not that strong, and we need to take steps to further strengthen it.
Mr. Leon Pereira.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Honourable Minister, Mr. Lawrence Wong, for your comments and references. Just 2 points of clarification for the Minister. Firstly, in view of the likely future changes in the demographic makeup of Singapore, the size of our reserves, the needs of our society and our population, will the government not, at some point in the future, and I know that it's hard to specify when, will the government not consider evolving the position on the treatment of reserves in line with the changing of conditions, or is it something that is set in stone and cannot be changed? That's my first point of clarification. The second point for the Minister, would the Minister acknowledge that there are costs on the other side of the equation? The more future governments have to raise things like GST, the more that raises economic pressure and potentially anxieties experienced by Singaporeans, and the more that can affect other things which are important for the country and also important for economic growth, like TFR, which I think, as we've said, is an existential issue for Singapore, like entrepreneurship, like risk-taking, long terms of innovation and things like that. And if we give more room to those things, might there also not be the possibility that these things could raise economic growth and therefore raise revenue further down the line? Thank you.
Minister.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I've learned in government to say never say never. as I mentioned earlier, we are prepared to listen to different views. We are prepared to listen to different proposals. And when these proposals come, we will always be prepared to review our policies. But my point on the NIRC rules is this, that this was debated at length only not too long ago. We went through this discussion in this House, debated thoroughly the points, and we settled on a framework that we think best meets the needs of both current and future generations and balances that fairly. And we decided to enshrine these rules in the Constitution. Let's not be so quick to rush the minute we need money and say, can we tweak the rules again? So that's on the first point. On the second point, would cost of government impose a drag on the economy? Yes, for sure it will. If the government budget, which means the revenues that we need to collect to meet the budget, balloons to 25% of GDP, 30% of GDP, 40% of GDP in some European countries, for sure it will be a drag on the economy. So what I would very much like to hear from members of this House, if you think that this is a concern, please let us have proposals not to spend more, which we keep hearing, but to spend less for a change.